From The Conversation, this is Politics with Michelle Grattan.
The political life is gruelling and sometimes it just becomes all too much. One of the Liberals' best performers, Shadow Home Affairs Minister Jonno Duniam, has called time on politics. He will leave Parliament before the end of the year, citing family reasons and exhaustion. Duniam, who still has work to do on the opposition's migration policy, joined the podcast to discuss the pressures of politics as well as the challenges a besieged Liberal Party is facing from a surging One Nation. Jonno Duniam, you've given us one reason for quitting politics, apart from family factors, that you're exhausted. Is this a personal thing, or do you find other parliamentarians saying the same thing?
Well, Michelle, obviously the family factors and being exhausted, for want of a better expression, are inextricably linked. One's energy levels are not drained by their job alone. Often life outside of politics, if you're a dad, a mum, a carer, whatever, there is a demand there and you've got to deal with that. But it is absolutely the case. You talk to colleagues and I marvel at some of my colleagues who have what seems to be boundless energy to be able to keep going every weekend and every night. You'll see them on TV programs, you'll hear them on radio, you'll see them on social media out and about, and I admire that. But again, being away on top of being exhausted, being away from family is something that is very difficult and adds to this sort of feeling in a compounding way. So it is something I know that other parliamentarians say, my colleagues from my own party, but also others as well. It is just the nature of the beast. Some people handle it better than others, and others pick a point in time and make a decision, as I have.
You've been in the Senate a decade. Do you think this so-called beast has got worse, the pressures have got worse during those years?
I think it's been a very chaotic 10 years, frankly. I mean, I came in with the double dissolution, which was something that isn't a regular event in Australian federal democracy. It has happened, but it's not frequent. We had the constitutional crisis and the changes that brought about. We had COVID and everything that brought about. For my part and the party I'm a part of, we had the loss of government and leadership changes along the way as well. And then obviously, you know, if you take this job seriously, you give it everything you have got. And I have to the best of my ability. And so it does wear you down. There is no denying that. I think that the landscape has changed. There are multiple platforms that people want to engage with you on. There are multiple platforms on which you are battling your opponents in the battle of ideas on, and you have to be prepared to do all of those things all of the time. If you vacate the field, you're leaving it open for others to define you and your work. So you do have to be on go all the time and doing all of that work everywhere. So over the last 10 years, it has definitely picked up, particularly when it comes to podcasts and social media, as we've seen.
Some cynics say that surely you must have looked at the state of the Liberal Party and polling numbers and so on and said, well, I'm not going to get anywhere. Maybe the whole party's not going to get anywhere for a very long time, if at all. Was the state of play on the Conservative side of politics part of your decision?
Well, there's no denying we have a challenge ahead of us. And again, that's why we had the leadership change that we did. And we've talked about that previously, of course. But I was asked at the press conference I did on announcing my retirement, if you were on the precipice of winning, if the numbers were very different to how they are today, would you be making a different decision? And I said, I think I would be more committed to departing. The idea of, as I said, if you take a job seriously, you are fully consumed by it. A government minister, and one would hope that if we won the next election, in my position, I would go on to be a government minister. But you are more than fully consumed. There is barely a spare minute in the day. You're not going home to be with your family. You're not helping out with problems being faced by your children. If you have caregiving responsibilities, you can't do that. Those things come into the frame and you weigh that up. And so the answer to the question is it's got nothing to do with where we're at, but everything to do with my own life and where I'm at and what I need to do. Now, that does leave me with a feeling of guilt, I'll be honest. There's a sense of regret in leaving friends and trusted colleagues on the field of battle when they're going to keep fighting a very, very tough fight and I'm leaving. And I've made that very clear. That is something that doesn't sit easily with me, but I can't please everyone. I can't be everything to everyone. I can't do my job justice and be a father to my boys properly. Something was going to have to give, and I made the decision that it is my boys and my family that came first ahead of this job after 10 years of giving it everything I've got.
Female politicians are asked much more often than male politicians about this issue of trying to balance family and political life. So let me even the ledger a bit. How difficult has it been to balance being a dad with the other daily demands that you'd faced?
Yeah, and through my involvement in politics, and I've been in and around politics for 25 years, 10 of those as a senator, again, taking jobs seriously means you are present and available and on deck for very long hours, whatever your role might be. It means you aren't there to help with the very basic things like getting ready for school and packing lunches and picking up and dropping off and running around for school sports, etc. That practical stuff is just the tip of the iceberg. When you've got problems, when kids are experiencing problems, and it's left to one of the parents, in our case it was my wife, to deal with those issues, it is very, very difficult. And while you may not be there dealing with the issue at hand that is setting your household, your family, it does have an impact on you. It is not a good feeling sitting in Canberra doing your job while there is an issue that needs dealing with family. And I know that is a common issue. I've talked about it with, again, colleagues across the political spectrum, people in the Greens, in Labor. I've spoken to independent colleagues. This is not unusual to me or my party. This is a human being condition. And so being a dad, and it's no different to people out there in other jobs too, I get that. This is not unique to politics, but there is, of course, when you're 20, 25 weeks of the year away from home, it does mount up. And yep, there's countless birthdays and celebrations and events that I've not been a part of. And I will say, on Sunday, I snuck out early to pick up 3 copies of the local newspaper in which the story was broken that I was going to be leaving politics. And I left a copy of the paper for each of my sons. And my youngest son, Spencer, got up and read it, and he was heard to say, as he was flicking through the paper, "I never thought this day would come." He's my youngest. My oldest has missed out on a lot of me being around. He's on the verge of turning 18, and my 15-year-old, I think you could only say, is elated by this decision. So I know very much that I've made the right call, and I think those boys are going to benefit.
And how old's your youngest?
My youngest is 11.
So we do need to attract good people to politics, more good people. I think there's a general feeling across the board about that. So how do we do that? How do we make the job a bit more manageable? And people out in the real world are not very sympathetic to politicians, but I think this is something that's quite important to do if possible.
Yeah, I think it is a consideration that people have. And I think it's interesting, both male and female colleagues have spoken about this. I have a female colleague who I know whose husband ceased work so he could be a full-time carer for their kids. And of course, there are male colleagues who've had female spouses do the same. And I think that is one thing in my work life for my boys that improved the outcome, was that there is one of the parents are able to provide continuity, because as a member of parliament, there is no continuity. You're there one week, you're gone for the next 2. You might be here on a Saturday, but you're gone on a Sunday. And so having some stability is essential. How do we attract young people? I think young people will still want to get involved. That's a good thing. My colleague, Claire Chandler, of course, announced recently that she'll be expecting her first child with her partner in October or November of this year. And she intends fully to be able to do her job as a senator, and I wish her well in that. I think it's a very difficult thing to do. But look, people have different ways of making it work. There is no one set of circumstances that governs family life. Sometimes there are very tough and difficult situations that beset a family, and that will weigh heavier on some than others, and you just have to make the decision that's right for you. But I'm confident young people will still want to get involved. I think what makes it more difficult to attract young people is probably exactly what you said, the state of politics at the moment, and we don't help ourselves when we behave in certain ways and people think, who would be a politician? Look at those clowns in Canberra. So there is an element of the nature of the industry we're in that probably is less helpful to attracting young people than the busyness of the job itself.
The Liberals recently rejected any proposal to increase the size of Parliament, but wouldn't this help at least the workload, especially of lower house members, and so reduce some pressures?
Look, I don't think increasing the number of parliamentarians helps with that. It's funny, just here in Tasmania, we increased the parliament by a further 10 people from 25 to 35, so it's only a small parliament still in the lower house. The workload has just increased. It's amazing. A bigger parliament seems to be more government, more committees, more meetings, more things going on. So I don't think it would change that, frankly. And again, a lot of the work isn't just committees and the operation of Parliament itself. If you are serious about your job, part of what you do is getting out and seeking the votes that you need and interacting with the community. And you can't do that sitting at home with your family. That is just the nature of the beast. You are out at surf club openings, at citizenship ceremonies, you're at shopping centre stalls, canvassing for people's views on issues. And so that it's just what it is, sadly. And I applaud those who can just keep going. For me, after versions of this, 25 years all up, 10 as a senator, that was the hard marker for me. And this is where I make my decision to be a better dad and be at home more.
Well, you're 43 and very tired. Pauline Hanson's 72 and seems to be just getting started. We're talking today just after her National Press Club speech, which I saw in person and you saw from afar. Can I get your impressions of that rather remarkable performance?
Well, look, I'm again marvel at others' energy, and I would just say on that too. I mean, yes, there is an age difference. I'm the age of Pauline's daughter, Lee, who I've not met, even though she's from my state of Tasmania. It is often, as I said earlier in our discussion, a matter of not just energy levels, but other circumstances that contribute to one's ability to continue on doing the job. And my circumstances are very different to Pauline's. And so therefore she is out giving a 90-minute speech to the people of Australia. I think there's a lot that I'm left questioning about where they go from here. I think that there are some pretty basic questions that need answering around some of their policies and how they're going to proceed. And I expect Australians will have those same questions. I was, though, impressed because my big fear was that, as has been the case often along in this debate, every time someone criticises Pauline or a member of One Nation, there's often a critique back at the person who's making these remarks, that they're gutless or they're some other descriptor. The journalists there were very respectful in asking questions. I don't think that ridiculous prop from Get Up, who claim responsibility, I'm told, was in any way helpful. In fact, counterproductive to whatever cause they're running. It will just merely highlight and grow the support for One Nation. But look, it will be interesting to see how it's reported tonight and what Australians take away from it.
How do you think it will be reacted to by ordinary people? Do you think that Pauline Hanson seemed aggressive, or what was your reading of that performance by her?
Well, I think there were certain parts of the speech that were very much keyed up to be the things that TV news networks and radio stations take out of it, or even print and online platforms will take out for publication, and I think it was cleverly designed in that way. I think that there is some very serious advice being given to One Nation and resources being put into what has become an incredibly professional political outfit. This is not a bunch of ragtag outsiders anymore. They are a serious bunch of contenders who have got immense resources behind them. And it's not just monetary or in kind. It appears to me that there is a lot of strategic heft being put behind the One Nation movement. So they are up there with major parties and therefore deserve the scrutiny that the rest of us placed under. I was interested to see at one point the claim was made that One Nation is scrutinised more than other political parties. I personally do not believe that is the case. You know, I've never seen a colleague of mine do an interview and when asked a certain question saying, I told your producer not to ask these questions. Like, you just wouldn't get away with it if you're in the Labor Party or the Coalition. Or indeed even the Greens or a Teal. But this is something we've seen from One Nation. So with that shift, I think that people have a lifted expectation of greater scrutiny and will expect more from One Nation. And we'll see over time how they react to what One Nation have to say when it comes to, for example, their reply to MyEFO, their reply to the budget, their reply to certain events that, you know, major parties typically respond to.
Can you understand, because you're out in the electorate a lot, this sudden but huge surge in One Nation support? What has changed over 6 to 9 months so dramatically that they go from 6% plus to around 30%?
I think that so back in May of 2025, voters sent the Coalition, and so I'll talk about it from our point of view first. The voters sent the Coalition a very, very strong message, the Liberal Party in particular. We are not buying what you are selling. You need to listen to what we need and then come back to us when you've done that. For the first 9 months after that devastating election result, we did nothing. We did nothing to turn the dial. And so voters marked us down at the election, and I think there was a hope, and certainly the anecdotal feedback that you know, when you're out in the community, people saying, you know, come on, you guys have got to get your act together. You've got to do this. You've got to start talking to us about certain issues that we're concerned about and confronting. So there was a hope from their point of view that we would switch on and start doing that. After 9 months, in the lead up to our leadership change, there was frankly no sign of us doing that. That was the perception in the community. And that's why, in my belief, people started changing when it comes to answering those polling questions. Who would you vote for? One Nation, the Liberals, Labor, Green. People were going from the Libs to One Nation in great numbers. And that was the concern that, of course, I think in part, certainly a big part, led to our leadership change. So we had been marked down because, as one colleague said to me, in the lead up to the leadership change, Australians were looking for signs of life. That's what they wanted. Now, Angus has set about providing to Australians signs of life. It's far from job done. There is a lot to do, but we are on the right track now.
That's not reflected in the polls yet, though. And how many times do you hear Liberals say we've got a lot more work to do? Is it actually a matter of work, but rather a matter of perhaps direction? And what direction? Do you think, for example, the Liberals need to move more to the right to combat One Nation?
So I'm obviously a member of the more conservative flank of our party. It's well documented. I'm not one for pigeonholing. I do have a free mind and tend to sometimes deviate from colleagues. But I read an article recently that I think summarised things fairly well. And, you know, we're never going to out One Nation, One Nation. Let's take immigration, for example, as an issue. We've put our policy out there. Pauline Hanson herself said it was a good policy. She then went on to claim that, of course, we stole it from One Nation. We didn't. It's our own work. I think she said we went further than John Howard. She was, as I say, quite impressed by what we'd done. But if that is the issue on which you are determining how you would respond to an opinion pollster or where you would cast your vote, then, of course, that is a core equity. That issue is a strong suit for One Nation. And we will continually find that as we spruik that issue and try and deal with immigration policy, we are going to be outdone on our right flank by One Nation. If we keep targeting and tackling issues of that nature, we are going to keep being outdone by them. So while we've dealt with those issues and we still have more of our immigration policy to release to the public and explain to them so that they know it is actually a good policy offering, we need to start dealing with other issues that I don't think One Nation are as strong on. Things related to economic management, to nation building, to future visions for this country. I mean, One Nation, of course, talk a lot about energy and all sorts of things in nebulous terms. But when it comes to hard and fast policy propositions, I think they are lacking. And that's where we will be able to have a point of difference. And people, not just perhaps on the right of the voter spectrum, but in the middle, will start to go, yes, that's good. We hear you. This is what we need. This is the vision we want from a Liberal Party that we're prepared to vote for. So that's what I think, to your point, work to do. Yes, there is. There is always going to be work to do, but direction is also important.
But you speak about the middle. There's also the problem of your left flank. You've lost all those seats to the Teals. Now, the moderates in the Liberal Party are in a minority, but unless you can get back some of those urban voters, some of those urban seats, you don't have a hope in hell of actually getting to government, do you?
Look, I think this is where talking to issues that affect everyone in a way that is not divisive. And this is the thing, the immigration debate, if you just take the headline out of a press conference that I may have done or Angus or whoever, it's easy to turn it into a divisive anti-immigrant rant from the Liberals trying to outdo One Nation. That, of course, is a set of issues that doesn't help with trying to win back votes in seats like Warringah, for example, or Kooyong, but, putting aside the fact that the policy itself, when you sit down and explain it to someone who might have misapprehended our policy intentions, they accept what we're doing and think, oh, that's actually not so bad after all, beyond the headline. That is the difficulty in Australian politics, of course. But this is where talking about issues like what our plan would be to create more jobs in certain industries, or how we might reform the university and higher education sector, how we will deal with our skills crisis. Those sorts of policy areas are where you do actually find that there is capacity to go into those seats and restore, again, trust that has been lost in us over the course of time. We're not going to win back those Teal seats, for example, by battling One Nation. We've got to talk to all Australians on issues that are important to them. And again, as I said before, if we keep trying out One Nation on particular issues like immigration to the exclusion of others, then we won't win back those votes. But I know our plan will be for all Australians on a range of issues that everyone is concerned about.
You mentioned Kooyong, and I suppose as we speak, Josh Frydenberg is weighing up whether to have another go at Kooyong in the coming election. Even though that's a couple of years away, if you were advising him, would you say stand or stay in the business world?
Well, I think Josh Frydenberg has immense talent, and I think whichever avenue he chooses to take, he'll make that stellar contribution he always has. I think in every seat across the country, I'd love to see the best candidate possible, and not being a Victorian, certainly not being a Kooyong FEC member, I would hate to offer free advice to members of the party about something that Liberal Party members hold near and dear, and that is the ability to choose who they have run in elections. But look, he would be a great addition to the team, as he has demonstrated previously as a member. I'll watch with interest what he does, but again, he was a very successful member of our team in government, and he's gone on to be successful in business. So either way he chooses, I'm sure he'll do well.
Now, you said the other day it's too early to talk about preference deals and the subject of cooperation with One Nation in a minority government. But how do you respond to those who say that the Liberal Party just has to prepare for such circumstances given the state it's in?
Well, I do not for 1 minute subscribe to this notion that we should be having conversations about preference deals or coalition governments. It's mad to suggest that that's what we should be doing as a party. Would you ever see a Labor politician saying, you know what, it's okay if you want to vote Green because we're not sort of green enough for you. Let's sort of try and find a way to accommodate that in our election approach. Every member of every political party, if they're serious about what they do and believe in what they do, they go out and say, put a 1 next to me, next to my party on the ballot paper, please. That's what I need from you. And the reason you do that is because if you've done the work, you've developed the policies, you've got the campaign ready to go, you can go out and say, here's our plan. This is why it's better than the other mob's plan. This is how much better off you'll be. And to that end, we think you should vote for us. And if you've done your job well in all of those elements I've just discussed, then people will vote for you. It's madness to suggest we just sort of have to go, well, they're here now and we just got to accept it and we'll have to work around it. No. Our job is to win back the trust that was lost over 2 elections now from the Australian people in us. And that is the work that we need to get about doing. We've done part of our migration policy. We've put out some tax policy, for example. There is much, much more to come, of course. We cannot just sit back and go, oh, well, hope for the best and let it be what it'll be. We've got to bust our gut. Now, of course, I won't be a member of the team doing that, but certainly I will be doing everything I can up until the day I leave to assist in that cause.
Your new federal president, Tony Abbott, says that the party must increase its membership and increase it a lot. And of course, that's important to manning polling booths and things of that sort. But are you finding people actually want to join a major party? They seem to be flocking to One Nation, and just as they flock to those campaigns by the Teals and probably are set to do so again. But the major parties just have this problem of getting members along. What's your experience?
That is a real problem for us. The traditional party structure that we have and how we try and recruit members and retain them and engage them is something that has been staggering over time, as in the numbers are starting to falter. That is a fact, well reported as well. I've always marvelled at some of, One Nation is a prime example of an organisation that has taken advantage of a sentiment in the community. That is that rejection of major parties because they feel like major parties are letting them down. Australians are not stupid, that's what they feel, and that is therefore being responded to in part by people joining organisations they feel are listening to them. In those seats you talked about before, the activism led to people joining Teal campaigns across the country. We've seen many people joining One Nation. Where there is a real belief in a cause, that is where people will sign up. And Tony Abbott's been pretty clear about it. For us, the cause is the country. Framework of membership, of course, is about our belief system. And we believe those beliefs, our values framework, is the right one for our country. So part of, again, what we need to do in inspiring members or people to join up as members is to let them see what it is we believe in and bring them along. It's a tough ask, though. People signing up to volunteer organisations is very much a difficult proposition these days. But one, Tony Abbott is right, we do need to tackle. And so inspired policies and a real plan to fix a broken country and chuck out a bad government is a big part of being able to attract those members in.
You mentioned earlier that you're a member of the Conservative faction in the Liberal Party. A few years ago, maybe it was a few decades ago, the Liberals used to look at the Labor Party and criticise its factionalism. Now they seem to almost outdo Labor in terms of factionalism. Do you think the party has become too factionalised?
I think that in certain parts of the country it is clearly a more formalised arrangement, that there are people who support one version of thinking versus another. At the end of the day, it is amazing, we get pigeonholed, and I've seen the articles over time, oh, Jonno Duniam's part of the national right and such is part of the left and so on and so forth. They appear regularly and whatever. People will always do that, and you'll always be pigeonholed based on your views. It is amazing when you sit down and speak to people who might be listed as being moderate, how much in common there is. It is just around the edges of certain issues that perhaps we might have differences. Certainly when it comes to matters leadership or ballots and the like, you get a little bit of that activating. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's become too factionalised. I think there is a lot of talk about it when the reality inside our party room is you don't see tribes with battle lines drawn. You see people who might have a different opinion express that opinion. They're not scripted in their views. They're very, collegial and free-flowing. So a lot of this does emanate a little more through the public domain around times of leadership change and when a party is dealing with issues and trying to fight its way back to where we want to be. But I really don't think it's the big issue that some have claimed it is.
You do have those factional dinners around Federal Council. Did you go to the Conservative dinner?
I went to some Conservative drinks and they were very noisy and we didn't get to talk much. But more than anything, fellowship amongst colleagues is an important thing. It's amazing, for example, in the Senate, we will gather as a coalition Senate party room and coalesce around a few lovely beverages and enjoy one another's company, notional moderates and notional conservatives alike. I consider, and would you believe some of my closest friends, I live with two men you would class as conservatives, Andrew Hastie and Matt O'Sullivan in Canberra, and they are the closest of close friends. But some of my other very close friends in Canberra would be Labor left senators who I respect very much, who we will have good, robust discussions about certain things. But, at the end of the day, this is the beautiful thing about our parliament that a lot of people will never see. There are good friendships. There are abilities to get things done. A huge portion of the work that we do in Parliament for the people of Australia never gets seen, never gets reported on because it's just not sexy. But people get on more than they appear to on TV, especially during question time.
I wonder whether there are any politically mixed houses in Canberra. Perhaps it depends on whether the rent is low enough.
Well, that would be a subject for an entire podcast, I reckon, Michelle. I reckon there have been over time, but at the moment mine is pure Liberal.
Now, you're staying on to help finalise the Coalition's migration strategy. How long will this take and where are you up to? In broad terms, what issues are still to be sorted?
Well, I've broadly indicated I intend to be gone by the end of the year. I haven't specified a date. There are a few elements of portfolio work I want to make sure I don't leave undone. Part of that is immigration. And I hope to get that done as quickly as possible. I'm working with other colleagues like Senator Michaelia Cash and Bridget McKenzie, Andrew Bragg and Ted O'Brien on our policy and others as well. If dealing with good, strong migration policy does come down to a sustainable number, that is the end result. What a number looks like and then working backward from that, how you arrive at that number. Part of that has been outlined by Angus already, and we've talked about the pegging migration arrivals to the number of houses completed in the year prior as a ceiling on numbers. There will be more around that. There will be an economic element relating to skilled migration and how we manage the system to ensure that within the number that is sustainable, the capacity we as a country have, we're catering to our need, economic need, and ensuring Australia gets what it needs out of people that come into this country. There is, of course, the issue of international students. Now, you can wave your axe around willy-nilly and sort of just bring down numbers, but I think it is important to work with universities. International education is the fourth biggest export in our country, and you can't just go and turn a tap off overnight. That does have flow-on effects for the cross-subsidisation of courses, particularly in regional universities where domestic students might be studying medicine, but the cost of teaching those courses in those regional universities is offset by international students. So, one, we know the number needs to come down, but we too need to do it in a way that is sustainable and effective as well. And of course, there are other elements to the Migration Act that need, close looking at. It's not a streamlined system. So they're the sort of broad areas of work we will be dealing with in that. And I intend to have that done for Angus and for my successor as Shadow Home Affairs and Immigration Minister, whoever that might be, in whatever makeup the leader decides, have that ready to go. And then if it's a job well done, which I intend it to be, I want to finish well, then they are able to go out and sell that policy and convince Australians it's the right one for them.
So just to be clear, will you leave us with a total number for either the intake or the cuts you propose, or will that be left to your successor?
Well, I will have done the work to enable a number to be put out into the public domain. Now, again, part of what we have said is the world in July or May of 2028, when the next election is slated to be held, is going to be very different. We don't know if we're going to have another pandemic. We don't know if there's going to be a war in the region. All of these things are totally outside of our control. And so it is important to release that number as close as possible to that point in time. That said, a number must be out there. We must talk about it with the Australian people. But more importantly than that, and this is what a lot of people get hot and bothered about if we, talking about numbers, but how we arrive at that number and what that number actually looks like. Who is inside that number? How many doctors, how many builders, how many international students, where are they going to be? That is as important as the overall number. So all of those things I've talked about, the elements of what a number would look like, how you arrive at a number will be out well and truly before an election. And then closer to, you might say it might be the penultimate thing we do in terms of immigration policy, or the ultimate thing we do would be to release that number. What date and how close to the election, I'm not sure, but I do believe it needs to be done at a point in time that the Australian people can see what it is we're proposing and make their decision on that basis.
So just finally, to go back to some of the issues where we started, on the basis of your experience, would you encourage one of those boys of yours to go into politics, or say, don't touch it with a barge pole?
It's funny, in Tasmania we have these political dynasties. We had the Bacon family, a Labor family, the O'Byrnes, another Labor family, the Hodgmans and the Grooms, Liberal families. I don't think there'll be a Duniam dynasty, although I did have a Labor minister here in Tasmania who was an uncle around the time of my birth. I remember his advice before I went into politics was don't touch it with a barge pole. But my youngest son, the one I talked about before, his school brought him to Canberra for their Canberra excursion, which I think is a good experience for kids to understand what the value of vote is and what politicians do and what Parliament is. And I remember after I had the good fortune of being able to talk to his class about my job, after we'd concluded that sort of Q&A session, I was milling around with some of the kids and my son, and it happened to be a sitting week, I should say. And one of his friends came up to me and said, "Can you tell me why that Spencer says he would never want to be a senator?" And I explained to him a lot of the things we've talked about here, perhaps in slightly more straightforward and simple terms, around time away from home and things like that. But I think that gives you an indication that none of my three boys would want to put their hand up for election. If they wanted to, I would support them. I would not dissuade them from doing so, because I think we do need good people, and I hope to raise good men in my sons to run for Parliament. I don't want my departure. I've loved what I've done for 10 years. I've loved doing this job. Yes, there have been times I've hated it. Of course, I'd be lying to you if I said otherwise. But by and large, it's been the privilege and honour of a lifetime to represent Tasmania in the Senate, to have the privilege of working with others who actually want to do the best thing by this country that they possibly can. And can I say, that is the one thing I will leave Parliament knowing. Not everyone is perfect. There are a lot of flawed, broken people in that building, and I happen to be one of them. But for the most part, people want to do the best they can for the people they represent. I might disagree with how they want to get there, or the policy or the law that they're proposing, but I applaud them for wanting to have a go. And I think that is a good thing. and something that if my kids wanted to have a go, I'd support them. But I can tell you at this point in time, none of them is contemplating a life in politics for the Liberals or any other party for that matter.
Jonno Duniam, thank you very much for being with us on the podcast today. We wish you all the best for your post-political life, and we wish you also all the best for the time remaining in Parliament. That's all for today's Politics podcast. We'll be back with another interview soon, but goodbye for now.
Production by Ben Roper. Theme music by Lee Rosevere. The Conversation is a not-for-profit media organisation. Sign up to our daily newsletter for evidence-based news and analysis, including articles from Michelle Grattan, or listen to more of our shows wherever you get your podcasts.
What are you going to have? Can I have 2 pieces of mullet? Please, Pauline.
From a fish and chip shop in regional Queensland
We are in danger of being swamped by Asians.
to the heart of Australian politics, this is the unlikely story of the country's most controversial minor party.
Are you xenophobic? Please explain.
For 30 years, One Nation and Pauline Hanson have been ridiculed, dismissed and shut out. Now, no one's laughing.
One Nation continuing to surge in the polls.
Dramatic surge in support for One Nation.
I'm back.
This is The Making of One Nation from The Conversation, and you can search for it wherever you listen to podcasts.